Hello, Steelers Nation. It's a Victory Tuesday, and on the show with us on the Still City Insider podcast, we have Doug Whaley, former Steelers scout, pro personnel director, and Buffalo Bills general manager. Doug, welcome to the show, and what a game last night.
It was a game. It was very entertaining. One of the things that I'm sure all Pittsburghers are excited about is the look of the passing attack. Now, obviously, when you think about it, they really only scored 19 points, but two of those touchdowns were taken off the board by penalties. But again, it's one of those things where when you see it, you can understand there is a difference between what we saw the first couple games of the year with Justin Fields and what we saw with Russell Wilson. And I know a lot of people, it's been talked about ad nauseum about having a second receiver. But when you look at what they did last night, I look at receiving options. And when you have a veteran quarterback like Russell Wilson, he elevates everybody's game around him. And that's why he is a veteran, and that's why he is a Super Bowl winner and two-time Super Bowl participant. He can get Mount Washington involved and get him a 20-plus yard game. I'll get Austin involved. He can get all those guys involved. So do you have a bona fide number two wide receiver? No, but you have a collection of number two receiving options. And you have to also give credit to Arthur Smith because he's doing a really good job of mixing up the run, the pass, keeping teams off balance, and not being predictable.
Doug, is Russ Wilson, I think you hinted at it a little bit there, but I'm going to ask you differently. Is Russ making these guys look like legitimate number twos, or are they legitimate number twos in waiting that they've needed this kind of quarterbacking?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, think about Van Jefferson. He has the resume, and as Coach Tomlin, he's got pelts on the wall. Now, Austin, he's been hurt, so he's just learning to get into that rhythm. So he's probably elevated by Russell Wilson. Van Jefferson was probably, hey, I just need an opportunity. Mount Washington was probably a little bit of, hey, I have some ability, but I'm not a receiving threat. But if you get me in the right situation, like Arthur Smith puts him, and someone puts the ball where he can make a play afterwards, then he can showcase some of the skills. And that's the difference between accuracy and being very accurate. And accuracy is putting the ball where a receiver can make the catch. Being very accurate and pinpoint passer means you put the ball where the wide receiver or the receiving option can make a play after the catch. And that's what you're seeing, the subtle differences between Justin Fields and Russell Wilson. No knock on Justin Fields. He did what he was supposed to do. He showed that he can be a competent quarterback in this league and win games. He just needs some more time to develop the nuances of becoming a quarterback.
Well, let's not skip out on the. I don't think anything on offense looked like a problem area, even though we know number two receiver is something that we should discuss, and we did. But the defense, are you worried about the defense, Doug?
I am concerned about the defense, especially the run defense, especially when you think about bringing in Patrick Queen, having a Landon Roberts, having Keanu Benton, having Cam Hayward, having Ogunjobi. That was supposed to be the heart of your defense, besides obviously TJ Watt and Highsmith coming off the edge. But no one thought, or coming into this year, I don't think anyone thought that the run defense would be so alarming. And for them to give up so much yardage for guys that aren't named Saquon Barkley, aren't named, name it. I mean, these guys, and you think about it.
Can you name any of them?
Yeah, it's hard to name up. That's what I was trying to think. I was like, well, I don't know these guys, but they are putting up numbers against this defense. And some will say, well, they're bending and not breaking. That's great. That's fine. And it ends up being how many points do they stop the other team from getting? But in the end, it's concerning. And especially when you think about the runners that they're going to be facing in the second half of the season after this bye. So that's something I think they're going to definitely have to work on, because teams are going to go after them. And think about it this way. The Giants were down their top two tackles. So it wasn't like they had their top offensive line ready to go. and that was their second or third team running back. So it's not like I said, it's concerning, and I'm sure that's something when they do self-scout over the bye week they're going to address.
And Doug, if we drill into that a little bit, is it a matter of schematics that they're giving up the big runs? Is it they're getting blown off the line of scrimmage, missed tackling, or a combination of all three of those factors?
And without doing all 22 and just watching from the TV, I think it's a combination of all factors. I think it's a combination of guys trying to make plays and getting out of their responsibilities. It's a combination of guys getting beat and at when they're trying to perform their responsibilities. And then sometimes, hey, they may have called a run blitz and it was a pass, and they called a Pats blitz and it was a run, and then you can catch these guys. So I think it's a combination of all, and that's why I think this is going to be an important week where that defensive staff is going to do self-scouting and try to figure out what is this issue and try to get it corrected.
Doug, I don't want to mock any of the guys you may have scouted. Did you scout Chris Hubbard by any chance?
I did scout Chris Hubbard.
You did?
And yes. And I thought he'd be a good rotational backup spot guy. As a starter, you're always going to be like holding and squinching and thinking, we got to get better. But as your sixth, seventh lineman, I think that's where he strives.
Well, I mean, that's what he did in Pittsburgh. And, when he practiced every week and got in every now and then and maybe didn't play left tackle, they picked him up off the street. Well, he was a practice squad guy. Put him at left tackle, and Alex Highsmith just killed him all night long. It was a beautiful thing to see from our point of view. But
now, so let's think about this, though. Yeah, think about it this, though. Think about them not having their top two tackles, them not having their top two cornerbacks, and in the end, they only won by 8. So as well as they played offensively, they didn't score points. Now, it was a good – let me say this. There's some concerns about this. I know everybody's 6-2. We're a lot better than we thought we were. We're excited about Russell. But this team is not out without its warts. And that right there, this last game, kind of, if you study it, these guys can't go into this bye week, especially the coaching staff, saying, we got it all figured out. Let's put the gas on the pedal and keep going. Because you had a Daniel Jones, and everybody can say Daniel Jones is not a very good quarterback in this league. They had a number 2 running back, second or third string, both tackles. And even though they got abused, and 2 corners that were backups, and they benched another one of their corners. So they're at the third or fourth corners, and you only won by 8. So there are some concerns here. I wouldn't feel all fat and jolly about these Steelers. They do have some work, especially with what's coming down the pipe. So the big thing is but the thing that is positive is they're winning like a team. They're winning with contributions from the offense, the defense, and especially the special teams. So team victories you cannot discount. But I'm just saying, be careful about beating your chest saying this team is ready to fight for supremacy in the AFC. I wouldn't go there just yet.
Yeah.
Well, Doug, we can be fat. We can be fat before I let you go. We can be fat and jolly for at least a week, the bye week, can't we?
You can, but you got Washington coming in. So if Washington comes in and it's a different outcome, you can't be like, what happened to these guys? They were on a roll. They were going to the Super Bowl. Not so fast. Think about it.
Yeah, and you're saying about what's coming down the pike. You mentioned the Commanders there. You got the Ravens twice, their whole AFC North slate. But then you have the Eagles, and you are going to have Saquon Barkley that you're going to have to be able to stop. That's in Philly. The Chiefs on Christmas Day. We're going to find out a lot about this team's second half of the season.
Yes, no doubt about it. But to their credit, they handled their business and did what they had to do to put themselves in position to tackle this gauntlet of games in the second half. And to be able to be up in the division at this point, you can never discount that, and you always want to pat yourself on the back for that. So there you go, Jim. You can be fat and jolly happy for that.
I just want the fans to be. I mean, I'm in interactive media. It would be nice if everybody would be happy for at least a week.
But then that's not exciting. Everybody's singing the same thing, then it's boring. You need some other things in there to make people think and talk about.
All right. Well, that's why we have you on today.
Yep.
Well,
That's why I
actually,
had to bring up that point.
yeah. Actually, go ahead, Jeremy. I'm sure you want to get to the meat of our discussion today.
Well, the one thing I wanted to hit on real fast though, because this is probably the X factor in the contest, and that's the Jim. You dubbed them the elite special teams, and they keep coming up in different ways. This week it was a punt return by Calvin Austin, but the special teams really has secured a lot of these victories early.
No doubt about it. And that's why I say we're having team victories, and there can't be more accolades showered on Danny Smith. I mean, he is incredible. The enthusiasm, the energy he brings, and as has been well documented, the affinity his players have for him is just incredible. And that's why they lay it on their line for him, and they go in above and beyond because they truly believe in what he is, the positions he's putting in them in to be successful.
Awesome. And we want to draw on your personnel scouting, guru-ness here. And we have the trade deadline approaching. We just saw that Deontay Johnson got traded to the Ravens, but are the Steelers looking for a receiver? How does that process work at this point in the year? And what could you see happening at that spot?
So, just for standard operating procedures, once you get around week 2 or 3, then Sheldon White, the pro personnel coordinator or director, and his team will start calling all 31 teams and just saying, hey, touching base with you, letting you know if you are looking to deal anybody, or you're heavy at any position, let us know and we'll think about it. And they will ask the Steelers the same thing. Hey, if you're looking to deal somebody or you're heavy in any position, let us know. Or the other thing can be like, hey, listen, we're shopping this guy. So you can get really pinpoint in your targets. But generally that first conversation is, hey, tread line's coming down. What's going on? Once you get closer, especially when it's a week away like now, is okay, we have either you reach out saying we have an interest in this person. Is he on the trading block? Or we heard this person on the trading block. What will it take to get done? You start talking parameters if you're interested in what it will need to get done. Obviously, you want to do some trades are right away. Some trades take a long time to come to fruition and closer to the trade deadline, but it's constant communication. And as we can see, things can change on a play. It could be this week, hey, yeah, we're heavy at tackle, and a play you lose a tackle, and you know what? You called me back. We're not in that mark. We're not going to be able to give up that tackle because we had injuries. So it's always fluid, but it's constant communication with all 31 teams. And then once you zero in on a target or they zero in on a target that you have, then it starts the negotiation of what's the compensation going to look like. And sometimes it's very easy and very simple. It just depends on who you're dealing with. Are you dealing with a team that, hey, let's walk away from this deal, everybody feeling good about themselves? Or are you going to deal with a team that, hey, we have to feel like we won the trade? And that's where things can get complicated and sometimes kill the deal.
Yeah. So do you see, I mean, there's receivers out there. There were about 6. Now there's about 2. The only 2 names I have are Darius Slayton last night. He was getting up slow. I'm like, don't hit him too hard, guys.
Right.
And Cortland Sutton over in Denver. But I mean, Denver's making a run now.
Yeah, so Denver's making a run. They're not going to do it. And I look at it this way. If they make a move, it's going to be someone that they're not going to give up a big asset for. They're not going to give up. I don't see them giving up over a 5th or 6th round for a receiver, even Slayton. But if they try to deal Slayton with where they are, the Giants, they're going to try to get some really valuable capital back in return, because they're looking, hey, if we're going to give up this receiver, we need to get something so we can replace that. And that's one thing that we in the media and we in the public have to understand. And that was a rule that Kevin Colbert taught. Everybody's always, and this is a different situation, but it kind of goes to what we're talking about. When you're talking about getting rid of a player, you better have a plan to replace the player. And so that's why if you're getting rid of a Slayton, which was one of their best receivers, what's the plan to replace him? It's not going to be a 5th or 6th rounder. It's going to be a 2nd or 3rd rounder that you can get in next year's draft, or use that that draft capital to move up and get somebody. So I just don't see someone like a Slayton or the Steelers going out and giving such high draft capital for a player that just because of the way they're playing and the way Russell Wilson is starting to get everybody involved in the offense.
Well, it can't be a fourth because that could potentially be the Justin Fields conditional pick. I'm right about that, right? You can't trade something that might be a conditional and promise them you'll never meet the conditions. But you can't do that. Okay. And it's not going to be a third for Slayton.
Right. That's what I'm saying. So, and I always say, when you are hungry, you get a saltine, you're going to say, oh, this is a Ritz. And us in the public, us in the media, we're looking at even Adam Thielen. Yes, he's a solid receiver, but is he going to cure the ilk of this number 2 wide receiver in Pittsburgh? Maybe for the rest of this year, but are you going to give a second round player up for a rental for a half a year? I don't think they're that close to the Super Bowl. If you're the Kansas City Chiefs, yes, you do it because it helps you to get back to the Super Bowl. I just am leery of giving such high draft capital when you're not that player away from getting the ultimate goal.
Okay, what about a guy like Mike Williams? Struggling, tall, still has some potential, could probably catch Russ's moon balls down the field, coming off an MCL, 5th round, something like that?
Yeah. Jim, what you're saying is all these guys, you throw them in a bag, you pick out the one, go ahead. It doesn't matter. To me, in my opinion, they're not going to be the answer. The answer is going to have to come in the offseason unless they're willing to give off of something substantial. And they've been shown recently because they could have had Adams. They could have had all those guys. I mean, and from what I heard, they weren't coming off a 4th rounder for Adams. If they would have came up higher, they would have got him. But they didn't want to come off 4th rounder. So that tells me right now they're thinking, we can get by with the guys we have, and we're not willing to give up something to get a guy that, right, especially the ones that are out there now, aren't that much different. Maybe they're a little better, but what are they going to bring to the table when you look at the total cost of the acquisition, the player, and what you gave up? How much better are you going to be compared to what you have now and keeping that and being able to build in the future with that draft capital?
So it's Van Jefferson and Calvin.
Again, they may go with Mike Williams. Again, I have no issue with them going Mike Williams, a 5th or 6th conditional that moves the 5th. Absolutely fine. But again, how much better is he? I mean, you let me know. I mean, is Dak the guy that's going to put the offense over the top? No, because he wouldn't be traded if he was that type of guy. You know what I mean?
One final question, Doug, before we get you off here. And again, we appreciate you coming on the show today. Are there any other positions you could see the Steelers inquiring with other teams about around the deadline?
Sutton's coming back, so I was going to say DB, and you can always use a DB, but right now with Sutton coming back and the way Beanie Bishop's playing, I kind of like where they are there. Linebacker wise, I mean, you got a nice core of guys, even though we said against the run, they've been kind of shaky. So outside linebacker, defensive line. Right now, I think besides receiver, that's the most glaring hole you could say they have on the roster, besides some maybe backup depth guys. I mean, because the offensive line's getting tested, but again, those guys get healthy, do you want to give some assets away to get something that actually may end up in a week or two being a moot point? It's
funny. Tomlin at the beginning of the year said, wide receivers have been so trained. There's so many coming out of college. We assume we could find one. It's never the case with defensive linemen. I mean, you might be able to trade a 5th and get a receiver, but Armand Watts, I mean, last night he made a play. They cut him. That's the kind of guy that's about it. That kind of guy. Well, okay.
No doubt about it.
What do you do with Cam? Do you put him in Beanie's spot right now when he comes back? Nickel?
I would see you got the bye week in practice and everything. Hey, it's a battle. You turn back the clock at camp and you guys split reps, and whoever wins the job out of these next 2 weeks of practice, go ahead. And Beanie has done well. But if you think about it, and here's my contrarian part coming out of, I know out of those 2 interceptions, they were tip balls. So he made the play, but he's not a playmaker on the interceptions. If you follow me there,
Yeah,
he was in the right spot, and you give him credit for that. But they were tip ball. It wasn't like he was covering the guy, broke on the guy right in front, intercepted the pass like that. So I would have to see more. And when he was in coverage, a couple teams picked on him, and he had some bad games. So I would want to roll the ball out. You two compete, split the reps 50-50, and whoever wins it in practice, that's who gets it, knowing that you have a backup and some depth.
I like that. You're right. You're exactly right. I would think at first Tama would not want to hurt Beanie's confidence after getting 3 picks in 2 games and then benching him. That's kind of a message. But you're right.
Well, then guess what? But also I struggle with people that lose confidence in being benched. Then that means you weren't mentally strong enough to be a professional football player in the first place. Every professional football player that has any grit to them is going to use that as Michael Jordan said, I took that personal. They're going to take that personal and get better and not be bitter, just get better.
Was that when Michael Jordan was cut from the JV team in 9th grade or something?
Yes, exactly.
Can you imagine that's like the same coach that put Ben Roethlisberger at wide receiver in high school instead of quarterback.
There's a famous saying that they're coaches. So they're definitely not perfect.
Doug, we appreciate you so much for coming on. Hopefully we can have you back on the show again. And thanks so much for your insight. This was definitely very interesting and insightful for me. So thank you.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'm glad I was able to join you guys, and hopefully I just gave you some tidbits of things to think about that a lot of people don't really think about. And that's what I like to do, just because, and it's not trying to be contrarian. It's like, okay, as fans and as media, we can get caught up, and I get caught up. But when you sit back and be like, okay, wait a minute, that defense, Beanie Bishop, yeah, that's great. But when and a friend of mine, my assistant GM when I was at Buffalo, was always study the stats. So just make sure you study before you go out there and say, this is it. So, fellas, it was a pleasure. Take care.
Thanks, Doug.
Appreciate it. Take care. See ya.
Take care. Bye.